Thanks for watching, or listening rather. This video is about the elites here in this life, the elites in the next life, and about how the upcoming reign of peace might not happen as is told it will. Now, those down here in this earthly life have been basically told one set of things. Those in leadership up there have been told another set of things. And I'm going to tell you why neither group might be correct. Why a third option is, in my opinion, most likely to happen. It's all about power and control. It honestly is. Now, this will cover the what is going to happen with the elites down here, and who would be the elites and the most powerful up there, who's really pulling the strings behind a lot of the stuff that's going on. So the elites here in this life, you know them, you know full well, you've seen lots of YouTube videos if you're even watching this. You know names like the Rothschilds, who are secretly behind a lot of stuff. They're not the tip of the iceberg. They're really not. There's a lot of others that are even more deep and powerful in certain circles. There's the Pope and the Dark Pope. Pope having a lot more to do with the dark conspiracies than many people would like to think. The ancient Italian and the ancient families of different geographical origins that pull the strings of the Pope. So, what about the elite up there and the other side? That's the good question. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Anyone on either side can see that there is a bit of a mess here. And those on the other side can see some of the really interesting happenings that have gone on in recent times, some of which having to do directly with certain programs that I'm a part of, others semi-unrelated. But there are crazy things happening, going on that we wouldn't have necessarily guessed at. I mean, down here it's easier to see. The elites are trying to do everything they can to destroy us. There's plan after plan after plan after plan to do horrible things. Now, obviously, people that are not them want them out. And that especially goes for the group of educated and old and wise individuals that are a member of the Grand Council up there. The Grand Council is comprised, as you might remember from the other videos, of the older ones that have already been there long enough to have families, good-sized families that have gone through, have a history with the society, have deep ties with our society, who are not going to just get up and just betray anybody. They're very solid individuals, very educated, and very wise individuals. And so, pulling the wool over their eyes is supposedly hard to do. However, it's been my experience that it's remarkably easy to do for obvious reasons I'm going to tell you later in this video. Now, all of these crazy happenings are not just random. Down here, the elites, you can see, plan it all. They have an agenda. The Bible that many people look at is a mix between, and like I said on the other videos, it's a mix between things that were given to them by our true and eternal society, and also quite a lot of stuff that weren't just flat out made up by the elites of the time down on the earth. And so the whole plan about what comes next and what's going on is not going to be exactly as is written. I mean, there's a lot of the stuff that's so vague that really, honestly, whatever happens, you're going to see the Grand Council and and the people in charge on the other side saying, "Oh, well, this was it, and that was it. See, look, we planned it all." Even if they didn't write it, they'll say, "Hey, look, see, look, there it is, there it is, there it is," and they'll take credit for it and say, "Hey, yeah, see, look, all this is organized, and all this is good, and this is the reason why we're such a good society." Um, Other things like the rapture. I mean, come on, people. There's flat out not going to be a rapture. And the reason why is really, really simple. The crown jewel, the prize, the greatest possession, the greatest sacrifice that was done from the other side was to create a good-sized middle class, to get good people there in place so that we can have something that never was had before. You had, I mean, look at it. You had village fighting village fighting village. You had either the ultra rich or the not as rich but still very powerful, or basically the peasant class. You didn't really have a good middle class, and everyone was at war a lot more. And you look at the United States, the idea of one city just wanting to go attack other city for resources, come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, that is ridiculous on its face. Nobody would support that. And even if two cities were to do that, you'd have National Guard and Army out there in a second. So yeah, the middle class is the crown jewel of everything that was built up by our society. It took thousands of years. It took a lot of work. It takes a lot of ongoing work to keep it maintained and to keep the elites down there here on the earth from blowing it all up and completely ruining it. So yeah, that's going to be protected flat out no matter what happens, because there's too much time invested. There's too much stuff that would happen if it was just going to blow up. And just taking away, literally taking away all of the good people, as nice as that might sound, if you're one of the good people, would completely ruin it. You would destabilize everything so badly that's just ridiculous. If you really know how it works on the other side, it's ridiculous. It's not ever going to happen. Now, going on to it though, what is going to happen? Like I said in another video, one of the plans that was given to the Grand Council on the other end, on the other side, is that continuing with the alien program, because, I mean, let's face it, the aliens here right now that you see were done by our group on the other side. It's not really 100,000 or 10,000, whoever many different races and from different parts of the galaxy. It's not that's just fake. It's just one. It's all of that is a really polite way of intimidation. And so this is a program that by now has had a lot of successes. It's not one that the general public has had much access to. Mainly, they've dealt a lot with the elites and keeping them in their proper place, making sure they don't completely destroy things. I mean, they work people against each other to for a certain good effect. But, I mean, and they make themselves seem as vulnerable as they need to for a certain effect. I mean, it's a really well-run organization, and they have the elites down here eating out of the palm of their hand. It's something that, as much as the elites down here think they're just going off to war against God, basically, or the ET there, the elites down here are, they're so easy to manipulate now from all the history that we've done that they don't really pose too much of a threat. I mean, yeah, there's always the threat there of anybody that has nuclear weapons, but the reality is we got it down pretty well. And so why get rid of them and why keep them? Well, simple. If you remember what they're doing, they're destroying the world, they're destroying the air, they're poisoning the food intentionally, they're poisoning the ground intentionally, they're doing basically everything within their power to create as much chaos and harm to others as is humanly possible. And it's just remarkable that our group has been so creative as to be able to manipulate them into not completely destroying everything yet. And when I say our group has them in check, I mean, it's impossible to keep them in a certain amount of check because they're going to slowly destroy the earth no matter what happens. And I would say, no, that's absolutely not in check. That's something that's ridiculously not in check. That's something that long term speaking, and even short term, it's drastic. We shouldn't have those things. So, in terms of what happens next, then the plan, well, simply of what is going to happen next in the future is to have either Christ come down or ET come down with Christ, but basically ET be in there, and extraterrestrials of a number of different races just come help heal and present the data and the evidence that was gathered for a very small amount of the massive amounts of, I mean, they have so much data that's not funny, but they're going to present small amounts of the data that was collected so that people can just be aghast at how bad that the earth was being led, about how many things that were being done, so then they'll feel doubly violated as to what the elite down here were doing, and then that way they can accept a level of peace and a level of wisdom without going and just rejecting it like it was rejected in times past. In times past, it was rejected simply because it was just presented like, hey, we are a good society, we have peace, we have equality, and we'll give you these things so that you can grow to become like us peacefully with equality, and so that you're not going to want to rule and keep your kids or your people as slaves. And that blew up because they wanted slaves. They didn't want peace and equality, and they didn't want it at all. But when you have multiple different alien species and the type of history that we've had now, then you can see that people would just look at it naturally as, well, we need to have be responsible people that are going to fit in with all the other many races of the galaxy, and not be so primitive that we're going to destroy ourselves. And yeah, that's true. I mean, that part is true, in that we should be like one of the races that is just one of the good ones, one of the ones that's not going to destroy ourselves, because destroying ourselves is stupid. Look at all the other, I mean, it's basically peer pressure except with aliens. I mean, the only thing wrong with it is all of the ones here that you're actually seeing that are real ETs, quote unquote, are actually fake. And so whenever I say real ETs, yeah, they're fake, but I mean, come on. They're the ones from up in our eternal society. So the plan for the millennium was to have them come down, present their evidences, help out with here and there, and get a society built that will be able to be long-term stable and peaceful. And the thing is, what about the learning of it? The kids come down here to learn because it's a free will type of thing. You can do whatever you want, and that involves killing, that involves maiming, that involves doing all sorts of bad things. And of course, then that takes away the freedom of others and makes a really horrible place. But the thing is, this is the time to do it. If you want to do it, you want to do it. There you go. And then you learn from it, and you don't want to do it again. It was this way because, going back to the beginning, people naturally did that. Once we were made the leap into the eternities, after they escaped their original society, it was peaceful for a short amount of time, but then yeah, really quickly stuff began again, and all sorts of craziness happened. It got really nuts. And it got that way because the genome, despite the best education methods they had, the genome and the rules, and really honestly, because it was an infant society, we were just learning what it takes to do things on the extremely long time scales. But when you flip it forward to now and this millennium that is coming up, we have a chance. We have a very good chance of actually making a sustainable time where people choose to do good, where extremely gross, bad stuff is just not tolerated, like mass murder and corporate or governmental sponsored genocide. I mean, things like that, we have a very realistic chance of being able to keep going. And the thing is, no matter how hard we try, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have a lot of bad stuff happening with any type of thing, but it's going to be a lot better from what we know how to do. Now, getting back to it, though, that's the plan that's told everybody, and it's a very realistic one. It's one that can happen. However, this is one of the important times I'm going to turn to the next subject. And it's important you remember that there are certain key elements in our eternal society who do not want that. If you look back at the history of my program, if you're on the other side, you'll see, and not just my program, but other ones, this one, that one, and the other one, anything somewhat related to millennium coming in, or better education, or better genetics, you will see thing after thing after thing happen. Maybe some group coming up and at last second doing veto vote and saying, well, we need to look at this. We need to think about that. We need to do this. We need to do that. Or maybe some other crazy thing happening, or this crazy thing, or that crazy thing. Anything that can happen so that it gets shot down, delayed, made impractical just because of how much flack it's getting, or this or that. It's not random, though. You know right now, if you look at some recent events up there, it's not random. And as much as you still likely think, hey, well, you know what, it's natural that group that was doing what the stuff that most recent stuff that was not good, their reasons it was excusable, you know, it's easy to understand it, this, that, and the other. But the thing is, you all have to just look at the big picture. It's one thing after the other thing after the other thing after the other thing that keeps getting in the way of having a peaceful rule based upon majority rule, based upon democracy type of mindset. The founders group and others have to keep stepping in so that things just don't keep exploding because of all the crazy issues that just naturally seem to be coming up one after the other. Now, it's been the stated purpose of that group that did those stupid things I don't like. They said, they said, hey, we need to have some elite down on the earth because there needs to be some bad things that happen. As unfortunate as bad things are, people need to have some experience with them, just simply because this is an eternal life that we're going after. We need to have this as an experience that is present on the earth simply because it's been in every part of our society. It's infested everything. We need to have things like murder and rape and child trafficking and all sorts of, and some bad things. And yeah, in their place, in small amounts, in certain spots of the earth, so it's manageable. But we need to have that for those good reasons, because they've always been a part of our society. And like I explained before, that's a really slippery slope. You have the elite here. You have people here that are trying to do evil. You have people trying to do evil, and they don't just limit themselves. They intend to want to take over. They get greedy. They want to spread things, and they want to spread it as quickly as they possibly can. And you get others here that chime in on the bandwagon. It is an infestation that happens that spreads quickly. Look at different religious literature that you on the other side have helped out with. Look at, say, Book of Mormon, for example. How many times just in that alone were there mentions of be careful of those types of things? Because you said it over and over and over again. It ends badly. It ends badly very quickly. It's a slippery slope. It's easy to lose track of it. And as much as we have experience with manipulating people and keeping them in certain boundaries, it's something that's too dangerous to keep. And the criticism by that group that our way is just basically having kids come down here to get their feelings hurt when someone called them a bad name. I mean, come on, that's also ridiculous too. If you try your best to keep out elites that do things like that, and if you try your best to keep out murder and this and that, this is reality. Stuff's gonna come up. It always does. Human emotions are like that. As much as better genetics can help, things are going to work out to where this is not just, oh, well, somebody insulted me at the playground, I'm feeling so bad type of an environment. It will be tremendously good and tremendously uplifting, but in any world where you have peoples that are free and uneducated are just thrown into this world without, a guidebook, you're going to have stuff happen. There's going to be plenty of things. And you can work in other stuff through your means of manipulation. You don't need to go fully to the extreme of intentionally keeping an elite group down here to keep terrorizing everybody. It was there because there was always going to be a power vacuum, like I said, and you needed to have somebody in place here to be able to manage that so that it just didn't go crazy and get 10 times worse. Yeah, you needed that, but you don't need it in the upcoming organized time of peace because it's designed already well enough to where you know that you don't have to have it. So that brings up what I said at the beginning of this video about what about the elite up there? Who are the elite up there? And let me just ask you questions then. Why are the Founders Council currently the top group above everybody? Why is the Grand Council not the top group? Wouldn't it be more fair for the main body of the society to have the rule rather than the small group of people that have been leading it the whole time? Maybe not, maybe not, but the stated reason is that the Founders Group started it all. The Founders Group is not just the ones in charge, but they're also the parents of everybody. Everybody that came afterwards, they are the parents, ultimately. Not like direct parents. I mean, they're grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-great. You get the idea. But ultimately, everybody descended from them that are in our society. Everybody. No exceptions. So they don't just have goodwill on their side. They don't just have they have the family there too. It is a family structure. Also, it's also stated that since they made the society and brought everybody into this in the first place, they feel a natural responsibility to where they want to keep everyone safe, and that weighs as a deep burden on them, so much so that they wouldn't dream about stabbing anybody in the back. They're not doing this for that. They're doing this so that they can protect everyone, and they really do feel bad about all the craziness that happened. And the thing is, yeah, we get the reasons. I get the reasons, but you also have to look at the other side of the coin here too. What one group benefits from continued craziness over and over and over again? Which one group benefits from it the most? Well, it's the Founders Group, of course, because they're only there because the main part of the group can't be fully trusted yet with running everything, just simply because it's been too volatile of a situation. Too many things come up, too much craziness comes up, and you need a group at the top where the buck stops here that can manage everything and keep us safe. So, continued craziness after continued craziness after continued craziness, that's a part of living, right? And what does it matter if they're benefiting from it? You could say, well, why aren't we aren't benefiting from anything? We are doing our job as leaders to make sure everybody's safe. And why would we want to cause extra stuff for our families? We don't. Yeah. Power begets power, and people in power want to keep it. People in power want to keep holding on to that and will do what's possible. They need to, and they can justify it however they want. But who does it benefit? It benefits that group, because that group is the one that stays in charge the longer there are crazy things happening. And if you have an elite that continues down here, you have a guaranteed 100% chance of crazy stuff happening. Plates being spun, trying to keep balanced on sticks until who knows when. Just this situation that has to be managed and that situation. Look at how much work it takes to manage the elites. Look at how the massive size of the ET program that we have. Look at the massive size of the religion programs and of all these other programs that are there to help insulate the main part of society from what the elites are doing. It's a massive, massive, massive undertaking. And it's one that is so imperfect that even if we keep at it exactly like this, we know the world's going to die. It benefits them because it creates a lot of craziness that needs to be managed by a group that is above the level of just the general council. Also, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm skipping over. Okay. So you have the power and control issues. But other things that lead up to it as well is look at the rules and the history behind the decision making at the Grand Council level. Look at them closely. The rules and decision making at the Grand Council level. Honestly, if I was going to tell everyone down here about some of your stupid rules and some of the stupid history, I mean, they'd say it's absurd at its face. You add to those your nature of explaining extremely well the good benefits of it and just sweeping under the rug anything that doesn't quite match with what you're saying. You have a history of doing that over and over again. Anytime that you explain something, you explain in huge detail the benefits of what you're proposing, and you just sort of sweep under the rug the other stuff. And yeah, I'm sure that in your debates you get more into the negative as well and try to have some more balanced perspectives, but come on. I mean, look at your rules. Look at the rules of the Grand Council, such as the extreme need to come up at the last second in the voting time period. And if there's any veto that happens, it's at the very, very, not even 2 seconds. It's the last 1 second that it comes in. Boom. And it happens over and over and over again, so that you can't plan anything because you don't know what the other people are going to say until literally the last second. You've implemented your thing. You've gotten everybody's approval. You're getting ready to go on your studies and the study and on the course of action you need to take. Everything is ready to go. You're implemented. You're in the field. Everything's ready, and you've gotten so many things done, and you just need the last thing to complete it, and boom, 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 last second after last second after last second thing that lasts years or centuries of every single time having something done at the last possible second. Come on, that's ridiculous at its face. Anybody can say that, yeah, okay, well, if there's voting time period and there's certain things that are happening, of course, sometimes things are going to happen at the last second just because that's when data comes in, or that's when some event happens, or there was things that we just didn't know until then. Well, of course, but that doesn't apply for over and over and over again. That's a political stunt that people use to get around the system. It's to game the system. You know that as well as me. But you got used to that, you stupid people up there. Sorry, I don't want to insult you, but come on. Think about it. I'm frustrated. You have to think about that last second after last second after last second, things that you're just not prepared for, and you just accept that as a part of how your history goes, which is another thing. It's these stupid rules that are there because you accept them because they're explained really well about why they need to happen. The downsides aren't really explained as well, I guarantee you that. But it's the history itself, the human mind, even one up there that's more educated. And sorry for saying stupid. I know you don't like insults. Okay, I will retract that. But history, even with people, is wise and as objective, well, quote unquote objective, as you all are up there. History is something that lets us lull ourselves into doing things, believing things that we really otherwise wouldn't. These crazy rules, and I've only mentioned one of them, but you know as well as I do, there's thing after thing after thing about your rules that are just pretend that you're explaining it to one of us people down here, and if you're saying, well, you just wouldn't understand it because if you preface it with you just wouldn't understand it because, then chances are it's one of the screwy rules that you accept because of reasons which I don't think that are worthwhile, like the history of it. And you look down at the history of why, and you can see because of this event and that event, because of this time period that we went through, and because of that stuff that was really hard that we went through as a society that this sort of came out of. And so, yeah, I get that. But you have to understand where it all heads up, where it all is pointing to, what the cumulative effect it has. If you have this rule and that rule and that rule and this type of organization, this thing and that thing, that makes your leadership less optimally organized than you know it should be, then it's going to lead towards undesired outcomes, flat out. You have elements of leadership that are not right, then it's going to lead to undesirable outcomes because the information processing of it is not done perfectly. You need an objective pathway of information processing so that you can see, weigh, deal with all the pluses and minuses and different opinions that come in here and there. Now, this leads me to the straw man. You've heard of the straw man fallacy. It's making an argument, or basically it's making a weak version of somebody's argument and then attacking all the holes in it, many of which you'd put there yourself. And this thing about your rules, that's just one part of this, the very long, very detailed, very expertly done straw man fallacy that is there. They're making a weak version of democratic ideal, and they're coming up with thing after thing after thing after thing that'll make it not work right. Rules that can be abused and are abused over and over and over again are an easy thing. You point out, simply you just say, well, look, they abuse the rules all the time. We have to have rules like this, because of that, yada, yada, and they abuse it. Well, of course, because you have a long history of rules that are not optimal, that need to be changed. And a long history of people being taught and brainwashed into believing them thoroughly and deeply when they really should be much more objective and just question it and say, you know what, we really need to change those things. That's really just not right. Another thing is members of the voting governing body that are woefully unprepared to be there. If you have extremists who just are completely not prepared to really have the type of wisdom and experience that is requisite to be in there, which of course you can see because they are the ones that keep doing this over and over and over again, abusing the rules, coming up with already things that have already been asked and answered 5 bazillion times, and yet asking them again. I mean, it's because a lot of those people need to have retraining before they get quite up to that level. I mean, look at this last group. How in the world could anybody imagine that after doing what they did, they'd just be ushered right back into the group, and here you go. Not only that, we're going to keep you so well informed, and we're just going to listen to you and basically just let you just take everything over again because you'll just complain at the last second and just not give in to anybody else's argument, no matter what is going on with logic or reason or objectivity or research or study or anything. You're basically they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to say no to everything that they don't want. So we follow them. I mean, come on. How can you have a group like that just ushered straight in? Yes, I know they're parents. I know that they're members of the community. I know they're people's loved ones. I know that we deeply love the contributions they've made in years past here and there. But you know, flat out, they admitted to doing those things on purpose. They admitted to going against the rules and knowing what they did was wrong. You have people like that admitted and encouraged to be in the society, in the high levels of the ground council, so that it can be a straw man. It weakens the notion of what democracy or democratic type ideals are capable of. It increases the level of aberrations, of crazy events that come up, and it makes for a more it makes for a situation that's just a lot more combustible. Little things can set off big events, explosions and whatnot of craziness. So if there's this straw man there, and I know some of you on the other side might be thinking, okay, I know nothing what I'm talking about. I'm just the wet behind the ears person that's not even on the other side yet, telling all of you who have been experienced there for thousands of years or more about what's going on when I haven't even really seen it in anywhere near as much detail as you have because you live there. Yeah, I know, but come on. This straw man is there. It is honestly there. It is 100% there. And if it's not, why don't you prove it to me and everyone else up there, especially everyone else up there, that it's not? Why doesn't the top prove it? Why don't you Founders Council prove it? Prove it to us. Because what I think that what I know is the Founders Council is more than capable of laying out very naturally, very well thought out plans that are extremely smart and difficult to detect. Ones that are brilliant. I mean, master strokes of strategy. This straw man type of article, of an argument, was made from a very long time ago. You have to ask yourself the hard questions now. Don't just write this off. Ask yourself the hard questions. If the founders group, or the quasi members of the ones that weren't quite founders but were still from very, very old and consider themselves basically to be founders. I mean, if this group of people were not going to, if they had wanted to make things fair, if they wanted to make things the best chance that we had for freedom and equality, why would they not have encouraged the rules to gently, over the last few thousand years, be slowly moved to be more fair, to be more sane, and to build the strongest possible version of democracy, rather than one that frankly has huge holes in it? When you're looking at the amount of intellects that are up there, its weaknesses are egos, and its weaknesses are emotions. You all are ridiculously smart. No one doubts that. But the ego and the emotion is the quickest, simplest way of getting you all to fall, because that's just how it is. And gullible. Preying on the gullibility of the main part of the group. I'm sorry, but the main part of the group is extremely gullible because you're taught to trust, you're taught to love. It's a part of what's needed to have a free society. It really is. You need to have that in order to have the type of society that's worth living for the extended times that we live in. You have to trust each other. You have to love each other. You have to have that to the extreme. You have to have some of these hormones that really deeply fill you. I know small amounts of what it feels like, and it's overwhelming. But that also makes you gullible. You have to be able to compartmentalize and just realize that over the many years, many years, what small little things would have needed to have been done to put us in the position that we are now. Really small things at just the right times. And the Founders Group was more than capable of that. Why were those rules not adjusted as we went along, here and there, as was needed, so that we could have the strongest version of the democracy that we can? Why was it that slow and steady retraining things and different required levels, required concepts, required behaviors, or things to understand? I mean, there's certain things that need to be required of people in that level. And of the oldest ones, or of the ones that were here before we started this Earth program, or of this ones or that ones, they had plenty of time, if you do it over the long term, to meet the criteria that is needed to have an ever-evolving, ever more perfect way of governance. If you do it slowly but steadily, nudging it here, nudging it there, slowly putting this requirement and that requirement, and giving plenty of time for people to get there, I'm sure that was done in some manner and method. I'm sure that you did that, but there were other things that that were done that are just gaping holes. And maybe you don't know fully because you just assume, well, this is how we've done it for thousands of years. Of course. But it's not how it should have been done. You don't have people coming up at last second over and over and over and over again as a part of how things go on. It doesn't give anyone else that time to study, think, and come up with ideas. It doesn't give people a time to really come to a table and discuss what would be best for everybody and come up with new ideas that really honestly can be best for everybody. It shortchanges everybody, including the people that are doing the stuff. So why do you have that over the long term? Why? Why do you have those people, like I said, that should have been trained better? You have one little thing after the other little thing that they could have been given, over the long course to catch them up to where the bar needs to be held. And yet that wasn't happening. And you look at it and look at the effect that ends up having. That has a destabilizing effect over the long term. That has the effect to where you have much more likelihood that certain explosive things can happen. And you have basically a powder keg in the making for times like this when you have the 1,000-year reign of peace that's coming up. And the dramatic changes both here to this earth and there into your society that have to be made. The massive changes in genetics that have to be made on your side, as well as the somewhat more humble changes in genetics here, the changes in education, the wholesale changes that were planned to bring things more into a modern era and try to get rid of some of the really nasty things that are happening. Let me ask you this. How many of you were really, really told about the full depth of what was going on with child trafficking, of human sacrifice, of things on the really nasty level, things that were kept? I've talked to some of the women up there that were not even told about some basic, some pretty interesting stuff. Now, I understand the need to protect people and to protect the main parts of society, but you have to understand also that all of these things that you're not being told, or you're being told about the good parts, not the bad parts, or about anything that's not truly objective, it adds up. It has an effect. And the effect is to create a powder keg here and now with the things that are going on that ultimately, where is it going to lead? Well, I can tell you where it's going to lead. The whole notion that we're going to get rid of the elite is a farce. It's a farce that is not going to happen, because we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in now if there were not a powerful group in charge wanting it to be so. These things that I'm talking about were not accidents. They were on purpose. We don't have the strongest version of democracy that we could have simply because so much of the history was left to fester there for such a long time that in terms of what people expect, that is their right to just be a part of the most senior leadership and the type of rules that they expect themselves to have to follow, as well as some many other details that I encourage you to go pitch in, the ones that really know it better than I do. But like I said, it adds up because the people in charge want to stay in charge. And as much as you know them and love them and respect them deeply, why would they not fight so adamantly against that? Why right now do they not come out and correct some of those things? Right now do they not come out and do whatever it takes to make amends for what has happened to my program and to the programs of so many of you out there that have tried so hard to have things unfairly squashed with some of the tactics that I've told you and others that you know? They give good reasons. They give far better reasons than I'm capable of telling you. But you need to start thinking on your own, thinking critically. And it's not a treasonous thing to do. It's the proper and right thing to do, to think in a way that allows people to be able to live in an environment where you truly can love each other. The thing is, you don't want to have to think badly about people so that you can truly embrace them and truly love them. And I get that. But you also have to understand that we can't make a society that really is true and really is free from the threats that will keep coming up if you can't realize that people are going to try to deceive each other. It doesn't matter the genetics. The genetics matter. The genetics are hugely important, as you know. But it also matters the history and the individual decisions that people make. And it matters the organization of the government and organization of the way that we process the the data. Uh, all these different things matter. And it just is a simple fact that if you want a society where you can truly let go and just love and trust people, you have to be able to make that free from those types of conspiracies by guarding against them. There has to be checks and balances as we go through where we can make sure that anywhere from the smallest to the littlest to the biggest and the oldest do not abuse things. We have to make sure that nobody abuses their power. We have to make sure that the conspiracies like this are rooted out. How many times did you warn against those types of things? And yet, we have conspiracies even in your midst up there. And I know why you're warning about all that. I mean, look at the Book of Mormon, for example. And those of you that are not Mormons, okay, well, I understand. I'm not pointing that out to say everybody has to be Mormons. What I am saying is that's one book amongst many that they did make. That, of course, Joseph Smith himself didn't really listen to either. So, yeah. But look at that book. It tells you how many times to be careful of those types of things. And I know that you and your eternal society have a history of that causing tremendous problems. If you want a free society, you have to be able to guard against those types of things that have caused us great problems down here and up there for a long time past. And you have to be able to analyze and see and make sure that people from the smallest and weakest, especially to the strongest and oldest among us, the most well-connected and the most popular, aren't doing things like that. There has to be a balance. There has to be better ways of finding these things out. But at this juncture, at this point in time, we need to understand that at this moment there is a conspiracy going on up there as well. And do I know exactly who it is? No, I don't. I know of the founders group, but I only have really talked to, I believe, one or two of the people in it. Actually, two, maybe three or four. I know I've talked to two. And there's, 200, 250 there still? Not to mention the ones that are, quasi-founders that weren't really part of the founders, but were really almost as much because they were so old and they went through almost as much. I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of people. And we need to start at the top. Because only by having a strong top that is, basically, let's face it, they're in charge of everything. They're the buck stops here. We, through our collective pressure in the middle and lower levels, need to be able to make sure that they are clean and good and that this types of conspiracies are not present. And the ones that are there are fighting hardest of all against this type of thing. In order to have a just society flourish, in order to have any chance of a millennium, of the 1,000 years, it's not really 1,000 years for those of you down here that are still listening. It's meant to just be who knows what, indefinite, who knows why. But if we're going to have the next reign of peace come in, like it was told to us, and the only safe way without an elite down here, then we need to be able to make a free and safe society up there that's not trying to get in an elite, sneak it past us all by means that they're using right now. By using this crazy situations coming up, people doing crazy things that we never thought they would, things that are unexpected, this and that, people demanding this and demanding that, even at gunpoint if they have to. I mean, we have to stop and root out this, and make sure that from the top on down that we guard ourselves against these types of conspiracies, of combinations of things. Secret, dark ways of doing things. And maybe there it's not as dark as down here, but let's face it, there's secrets that are up there, and not all of them are good. Only by making sure that these are not there, only by making sure we do our due diligence in thinking and understanding and analyzing to make sure that we're safe, can we really truly build a society that is safe from that. And only when we have a society that is safe from that can we truly let go and honestly love everybody. You take the same person, if you don't encourage a good atmosphere, the same person could be really, really bad, as if you do encourage that atmosphere, maybe they will be really good instead. People that are on the fence won't do things in many cases if you give them enough reasons to succeed and enough other reasons why not to try to fail. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. At this point, with what I've been through, I question whether I even want to be with any of you. And that's really sad. Because I don't really at this point feel that the main bulk of you have what it takes right now to just stand up, fight for your rights, fight for our rights, fight for an environment in which we can all come together around a table and come up with a good plan, way of doing things, and implement it, come up with the details needed, work out through our differences in a constructive way. Because you don't have enough of the history of it. Let's all make a concerted effort to get this done and get this done now. Because let's face it, you've already declared that the millennium has happened already, started out the beginning stages of it, and you don't, and I really don't think that you have a good grasp on what even right now is being planned for it. I think many of you are just still under the assumption that most of the things that were told you are going to happen. But is many of the crazy stuff that has happened already that you never thought would happen, and yet it has already? There's even more stuff planned for the future. And who am I to tell you all that? I'm just some random schmuck down here. Well, I'm a random schmuck down here that lives with humanity, that learns to even smell these types of things from a distance. Trust me when I say this. There's more stuff that's going to happen, and the type of millennium that will be is not the type of millennium that you are thinking. You're going to make a lot more. You're going to make a lot more concessions than what we have even right now. And I believe that if we don't get these checks and balances going, and if we don't stop it, those that have been behind it this whole time are just going to wrap this neatly up into keeping them in power even longer, indefinitely. You have to remember, people that have been in power can be willing to do almost anything to stay in power. This is something that can be dangerous if we don't go about it the right way. We have to defend the future. We have to defend what we are capable of. We have to defend what we were promised. We've done enough research. We've had enough test results. We know enough about what's going on to be able to start to slowly build our way to that society that can have 1,000 worlds, that can have 2,000, 10,000 different systems. But we can't have that type of leadership if we can't get this hard choices done. I more than any of you want to have a society where we can just most of the time forget that anybody's out to try to take advantage of each other and truly embrace and truly love each other. But, I mean, the fact is right now I don't trust most of you because I have no reason to, and I have every reason not to. And that needs to change. We all need to change it. We all need to come to the table together and enforce these good rules so that we can build a society that can self-govern, that can take all sorts of opinions from different people, use information processing techniques to get through that in a fair way where everybody really gets heard and where all sides of every argument can really honestly have some sort of a more fair go because of the efficiency of the way that we go about processing it. We need to get better at this. We need to get better at rooting out the evils, the conspiring people that it meant to take away our rights. You know that has happened. Look at the history books. It's happened over and over again and recently. And it's not something that's, well, we were just this or we were just that. It's designed by people to take away your rights. And when it takes away your rights, that's another thing that's chipping it away at what we really are capable of. We are capable of a beautiful society, much more than what you see here now. And I know as much as you say, this is incredibly wonderful, you're just impatient of this or that. No. Right now, I see the ugly parts of it. I see the things that humanity is doing right now. And I see that, okay, when I want to have kids up there eventually, when you have kids, what's to stop it right now from accidentally going into a really, really much rougher area than the kid was ever supposed to be in? What's to stop it from, say, having your kid be abducted and sold off to sex slavery or other things like that? Yes, that passes. People live through it. People get help and afterwards. But really, honestly, there's such brutal and long-lasting things that these scars will remain for a very long time, and you know it. These are things that people shouldn't have to go through if they don't absolutely have to. Maybe that'll happen anyway, but it has happened anyway, despite, we didn't plan a lot of these things for happen, you know that. But in the future, we can't have it here because we plan it. The evils are here now because they just were, and we couldn't get past it. But that's a whole different ball game than us planning for that to happen. And so, come on. You don't just have to have a heart. You have to understand that we have a better way of learning. It's not just drop and bop and smack your kids until they're past ready to crumble. They can have an experience that is amazing. They can have an experience that is just deeply fulfilling. Yes, that it's traumatic at times, uplifting at others, but that the net effect is something that they'll never forget and they won't have to be traumatized for 1,000 years past. Some things that will give them the knowledge they need to really understand good and evil and really understand why we made the choices the society has made and take the next step forward. We can take people that are very, very good at being able to step and help us take us the next step as a society. We can be the eternal society that we dream of. But we can't be it if you can't step up out of the shadows right now and take charge and get these people taken care of that are trying to lead us in the bad directions. They are there. I promise you they are there. They are trying every day to stop this from happening, all the while making you think that they're the most just and wonderful, lovable people imaginable. They are there, and they are scheming behind the scenes in dark corners that they intentionally hide. And as many checks and balances as you have already, they are already past them. I know the types of things where you have some checks and balances, but, come on. I'll stop preaching now, but you need to get going on it, because if you don't, you're going to see people leave your society, and I will be one of them. We need to have a really, truly good chance at peace now down here for the students. It's never going to be perfect, but we need to have the best chance that we can to make a guided education which will help people get the best out of their experience rather than something that so deeply traumatizes them that they don't want to do things just because they hated it so much. Because you know what? That doesn't work. When they get frustrated, you just move back into old habits, and those that have been put through the worst of the worst are not the safest of the safest. They just aren't. So I'm going to get going. And those for you that are down here that somehow managed to get through this, I know it might sound a bit confusing and disconcerting at times, but when you all get to the leadership, you have to understand that they're not telling you all everything. That the tremendous amounts of child trafficking, human sacrifice, cannibalism, things that are way behind the scenes you wouldn't even think they're happening. You know what? I dare you, look into the tapes back there. Look me up eventually once we're both up there, and I'll show you that that happened. You know, I'll show you that even worse happened. We need to make things better for everybody. That's all I'm saying. And making sure that the dark forces that are in play right now get stopped, that's in all our best interests. See you later.